Yes, this is a adult human reviewing Thomas the Tank Engine characters in a dead meme format. Hi, everybody. I am Gavin. I have started a YouTube channel where I talk about stuff to do with railroad history and talk about media through the lens of trains and railroading stuff. But I also thought a good way to get the ball rolling would be to just do a fun, goofy video where I rank characters from Thomas the Tank Engine, because Thomas was a big part of my childhood. So much so, my parents still give me Thomas gifts that they find at Goodwills and things like that. I do indeed own a Thomas the Tank Engine pillow pet. Yes, it actually is comfortable. So today we are going to talk about seasons 1 and 2 characters. I don't have Sir Topham Hatt or any of the human characters. That's not me drawing a line or getting particularly passionate about anything. I just forgot. Also, I forgot. So here's the thing: the way I consumed Thomas the Tank Engine as a kid was watching tapes. So I had a few compilation tapes of just Thomas episodes, and then I had a couple Shining Time Station tapes. So through the combination of those VHSs, that's how I got to experience Thomas when it was in model form. I dropped off kind of around when CGI became a thing. I have watched a few CGI episodes as an adult on YouTube just for fun, and a few of them are really good. Like, I genuinely look forward to watching the newest one where, like, Merlin is introduced, because I watched the song in which Merlin is introduced, and I thought that was pretty cool. But yeah, so as you can see on the right hand side here, got a bunch of engines and three not train characters. Or sorry, 3 not locomotive characters that I'm gonna rank. I'm just gonna throw these on the board, and then we'll go through and kind of argue, like, is this one better than this one? Right off the bat, Flying Scots no, we got Trevor. Trevor works hard, and he entertains children. He was saved from scrap by Edward. We established that in the Oliver origin episode. I think Trevor's a solid B to get things started off with. While we're at it, let's get Terrence, the tractor. He has to put up with Thomas's crap, so I think that he was also a really cool toy. I really like the That's the other thing. I owned a lot of the ERTL Ertl toys, the diecast ones. They made some pretty chill toys. As speaking of, I had City of Churro. City of Churro has no face, and I don't think City of Churro speaks in the show. I know Churro spends the night talking to all the engines except Thomas in the book. Churro's cool. Now, I think City of Churro is cool as a real locomotive because it probably was the first one to break 100 miles an hour. Then there's Flying Scotsman, our boy Flying Scotsman, whose only appearance in the physical world was 2 Henry tenders that were painted slightly differently because the show had no money. Flying Scotsman is famously the actual engine to break 100 miles an hour. City of Churro didn't have, like, actual people. That Flying Scotsman broke 100 miles per hour as a PR stunt. LNER were 90% sure Scotsman could get up to 100. Scotsman's also I'm not gonna bring the CGI version of the show into this too much, but just from having watched, like, a couple YouTube videos from that big race special, Scotsman's kind of a jerk.
I didn't think there were famous engines on Sodor. Oh, hello, Gordon.
Do you two know each other?
Yes, Thomas, we know each other.
Speaking of not super interesting characters, where are you? There we go. Hey, Harold the Helicopter, your toys sucked and you're not interesting. This is gonna be contentious. I'm gonna rank Bill and Ben and Donald and Douglas both as one unit, because that's kind of their whole point, is that there are 2 of them, and most of their episodes involve both of them in some way. Bill and Ben, they're troublemakers, they have personalities, but they also get the job done. They hold down a pretty stable job at the quarry. I think that gets them a solid C ranking. I can't remember any specific episodes with them, so Speaking of remembering specific episodes, my boy Diesel. Now, I watched the American version of the show. I did have a few VHS tapes with Ringo Starr narrating. Diesel was very oily, very evil.
We Diesels don't need to learn. We know everything. We come to a yard and improve it. We are revolutionary.
Diesel probably was the first character I had that whole love-to-hate relationship with, and I think it's an automatic S ranking. Speaking of really cool characters, Oliver, my main man Oliver. I'm probably going to do a whole episode on Oliver's origin story, both in the book and in the show, because I think there's a lot to talk about there, because there's some, like... Oliver is politically charged. Let's just say that. But some of that is kind of thrown away when Oliver becomes a main character, or not a main character, but a recurring character in the show, because they kind of had to undo, like, he's been through this traumatic experience, he's escaped, he can live his life now, because he's not worried about being hunted down by a Diesel. But then he just thinks he's a hot shot and gets into a bunch of problems. He kind of gets Thomased really hard in that he's a tank engine who thinks he's got ideas above his station. Wordplay. And he just messes up a lot. And that's not super interesting. I like Oliver a lot, though, so I think that kind of preserves that to a B. Speaking of characters I like a lot, Mavis. How are we doing? She just works hard, gets her job done. I recall the only episode in my memory in which she messes up is that one where there's like mud on the rails and she needs help from another character, and that's it. It's not really too much of a fault on her part. Donald and Douglas, the origin of my obsession with Scotland as a child. Now, their voices from George Carlin sucked. George Carlin couldn't do Scottish to save his life.
You're a muckle nuisance, said Donald. It's to leave you behind I be wanting.
You're a muckle nuisance, said Donald. It's to leave you behind I'd be wanting.
But I think they're fun. They get up some hijinks. They were cool toys. I liked having the bigger engines as toys. They're gonna go right there in the A. Let's do Duck next. Duck, Montag the Duck. I like pannier tank engines. I think they're really cool looking. I think some of the reason I like pannier tank engines is because of Duck. But I liked Duck's toy. I like this side tank look. He always seems to have his life in gear. I guess this shows that I'm aging a little bit and that I'm getting close to being 30, in that the characters in Thomas the Tank Engine I most identify with and kind of want to be more than any of the others are the ones who just put their head down, do their work, and they don't get in trouble. I guess it's kind of the modern fantasy, isn't it? Like, millennials just want the ability to do some work and live their lives without being put down. Duck just gets the job done. He doesn't get into too much trouble. Speaking of getting into trouble, Daisy. I hear Daisy's back in the CGI version of the show. Like, there's 2 or 3 episodes involving Daisy. Kind of want to watch those because Daisy was equally interesting and boring in the model. Because, like, this toy, I had the toy of Daisy. The toy of Daisy was cool. I mean, auto coaches in general, I think, are pretty cool looking. But Daisy was also she's one of those, like, Daisy was a less cool Diesel, I found. And quite frankly, except for the one with the bull, I can't remember Daisy's contributions to the show, so we're going to throw her down there. Speaking of someone without much contribution to the show, we got Boku. Boku is based on the most boring-looking locomotive in history. It is just a tube, and they put a face on the front because that's how Thomas the Tank Engine works. Boku is like Duck and Mavis, a character who just gets the work done. But Boko also just doesn't really have much of a personality. And as a result of not having much of a personality, isn't in the CGI version of the show at all, from what I'm told. I think I saw like a fan rendering of Boko, but that's it. So Boko gets to go down here with the Scotsman. Toby. Listen, Toby is cool looking. I liked Toby's toy, but sitting here, I can't really think of much besides Toby being a background character. Now, Gordon steals the show because Gordon is Flying Scotsman but has lines. Gordon's big, he's loud, he's full of himself, he gets comeuppance for that sometimes. I like him, but he's not my favorite character, but I do like the idea of a bombastic character who is bombastic because they can kind of back it up. Gonna throw Gordon in on a C level there. Henry is the counter to Gordon, right? Like, Henry is this big, powerful engine who's also not the fastest, and it is prone to just kind of being a little bit of a wimp. Whatever. My boy Edward. Edward is fascinating as I get older and learn more about railroad history. Edward interests me because Edward is similar in construction to City of Churro, and that is no mistake. You can see the open cab design, the large wheel wells, and then Edward also has these big wheel wells, open and mostly open cab design. It's a little more closed off here because Edward isn't just based off of City of Churro's model, but Edward is designed to be the older engine. Like, he clanks, he's worn in, he's not as fast, he gets his work done anyway. I like the idea. There was a period where Britain's railways had these trains that did work. Like, they still were useful, but not as useful as they could be, because the problem with, or not the problem with, but kind of the truth about steam locomotives is they are so complex. Even with replacing parts, there's gonna be areas where they're like broken in, they're worn down, and like it would be prohibitively expensive to tighten things up and make it as performative as it was when it was brand new. Scotsman was only able to hit the speeds it hit because it was brand new. Mallard was only able to get to 126 miles per hour because Mallard was brand new when they did that run. If you ran Mallard today, if you had unlimited money and said, if it breaks, we'll fix it, Mallard probably couldn't get up to 126 miles an hour without major refits. So anyway, I like Edward's character as an adult. I like Edward because he's like this old guard who still is just working. As a kid, I liked Edward because he just, like, he got it done. And even when people were like making fun of him for just being, he still did what was asked of him. And like, James grows as a character. And I kind of like that. I don't know what James is like in the CGI years. Maybe they kind of backpedal that. But in the model episodes that I watched as a kid, you could kind of track. Like, he shows up, he's black, and he has the accident because of the wooden brakes. And then Sir Top of Man has him like restored, and he's painted red. And the bee stings him, and all this stuff. Like, he's a mixed goods engine. He's like Gordon in that he thinks he's hotter than he is. But unlike Gordon, he doesn't have that raw power to kind of back it up, so he has to learn and grow a little bit. I do recognize that Thomas the Tank Engine is a show for literal children, and me talking about character development is almost an accidental thing on the show's doing. But I as an overall character, I think James is fun, and I like his aesthetic. He was one of my favorite toys as a kid. I think he gets a nice A ranking. Percy can just live right down here somewhere. I don't know. Percy has some really good episodes. Some of my favorite episodes of Thomas the Tank Engine star Percy, but that doesn't mean Percy's the best thing in them. It just means he happened to be there for it. I think he lives down here with Boko. On that note, let's talk about the man of the hour, Thomas the Tank Engine, star of the show. Thomas, where do I put you? Thomas is a really good-looking design. He looks good. He also is literally the star of the show. He's in the most episodes. He's the focus of a lot of them. In the CGI episodes I've seen, Thomas is more of the wizened, sort of older character, in that he's telling other characters, hey, that's wrong, and maybe we should figure this out, or hey, I feel like what you're doing is not right. So he's kind of the goody two-shoes. In the earlier episodes, like based on the original stories, he's a little bit more of a snot, because he's meant to be a audience surrogate character, right? Like, he's meant to be the vessel for the kid who's watching the show or reading the story, so they can see something about themselves in it and then learn, like, oh wait, that's not a great thing I'm doing. I should correct that behavior. Because no matter what you want to think about Thomas the Tank Engine, it is very moralistic in its construction. Let's remember, it says Reverend Audrey as the origin for a reverend wrote these stories. They have a morality to them, and as a result, Thomas, he's not S rank. I'm gonna say, like, Thomas is cool, but as I'm sitting here, we'll do this. We'll put Thomas in B. Let's start at the bottom. Would I watch a Harold episode over the Scotsman episode, Boku, or Toby? No. Would I want? These two are better than Scotsman, also better than Boku. I think so. Would I watch a Flying Kipper's a really good episode. Henry's Flying Kipper episode is as good as the Percy Ghost one, which I argue is Percy's best episode. Fight me on that one. Actually, don't fight me on that one, but if you do, I'll say this. If you have a better Percy episode than that one, you want to pitch as, like, this is proof Percy's a better character, I'll take it. I would much rather watch... Okay, here's what we're going to do. I'm not doing this to be edgy. I don't want to be the edgy Thomas the Tank Engine fan. There's plenty of those as it is. But what I'll say here, just to defend myself, Henry's episode about the Flying Kipper and Henry's episode about the forest that gets knocked down by a storm and he helps restore the forest, those are two really good episodes, and I think they are as good as Thomas's early episodes, if not more so. And Gordon's episodes are also as engaging. In the episodes Gordon has specifically with Thomas, Gordon is the more interesting character. Oliver is just a boss. Trevor's a boss. I stand by all these. So yeah, I'm going to call that done. That is my ranking of season 1 and 2's characters that I could remember off the top of my head. If you like this video, I am seriously considering ranking the small engines as well from season 3 or 4 or whatever it is. And I definitely want to do more Thomas forward content. I have half a mind to do a full review of, like, The Little Western, which is a fan movie about Oliver. I do have some things on the docket for later videos about Thomas stuff. If you want to see any of my stuff early, you can support me on Patreon. There's also some fun backup. There's some fun bonus stuff on there as well. I am a podcast journalist and a podcaster, as well as a video producer. So if you want to see any of that stuff as well, Patreon is the place to go. Here's the link on screen, as well as in the description below. I know YouTube is a little precious about Patreon stuff, so I'll try to not get banned for that. We'll see how that goes. If you want to see videos, just subscribe and, you know, hit the bell to get notifications or whatever. YouTube's changed a lot since I was last here. But yeah, this was a goofy Thomas ranking video. If you have a ranking of your own, if you disagree or agree with any of my stuff, comment, tweet me, whatever. Thanks for sticking around for about 20 minutes of content. I appreciate it. Everyone's time is valuable in this day and age, and you are cool for sticking around. So yeah, have a good one.